Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something called CBAM, the EU's new Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism.
So, the European Union has this new climate policy. And at first glance, it seems pretty simple, right? It's basically a tax on the carbon emissions of stuff being imported into the EU.
But what if it's not just another environmental rule? What if this is actually a massive reset button for global trade, something that could change, well, pretty much everything about how the world economy works?
Yeah, I'm not exaggerating. One analysis called it the most consequential shift in global trade rules since the creation of the World Trade Organization. We're talking about a huge deal here, a real tectonic shift in how business gets done on a global scale.
All right, so let's start with the official story. Why did the EU create CBAM in the first place? It all comes down to solving a problem they call carbon leakage.
So what is carbon leakage? Well, picture this. You're the EU, and you put a price on carbon to fight climate change. Great. But what if your big steel and cement factories just say, you know what, this is too expensive. We're moving to a country with no carbon tax. That's carbon leakage. It's bad for your economy, and it doesn't even help the planet because the pollution just moves somewhere else.
And this created a really unfair situation. You had EU producers paying these high carbon costs under a system called the ETS. But then, foreign producers could make the exact same stuff, ship it to the EU, and pay, well, nothing for their carbon emissions. It was a massive competitive disadvantage for European companies, a totally uneven playing field. And that's where CBAM comes in. The whole idea is to level that playing field. It basically says, hey, if you want to sell your products here, you have to pay the same carbon price that our own companies pay. Seems fair enough, right? Just a simple fix to close a loophole.
But, and this is a big but, underneath that simple, logical fix, something much, much bigger is happening. We're talking about rewriting the very rules of trade. This is where it gets fascinating.
Okay, look at this. For decades, the name of the game in global trade was simple. Who can make it cheapest? The whole system was built around cost per unit. But CBAM just flips the whole table over. Now the new logic is emissions per unit. It's not just about how cheap your widget is, it's about how clean your widget is. This changes everything.
And if this feels familiar, it should. The EU has run this play before. Remember GDPR, their big data privacy law? They made a rule for themselves and boom, suddenly companies all over the world had to comply if they wanted to do business in Europe. It became the global standard by default. CBAM is basically GDPR for carbon.
So what does this new trade playbook look like in practice? Well, forget just haggling over tariffs. The new negotiations are all about the nitty-gritty of carbon. We're talking about carbon intensity metrics, emissions reporting standards, how you even measure this stuff. All of a sudden, you need scientists and data experts at the trade table, not just diplomats.
Okay, so we've talked about the theory. Now, let's get into the real-world consequences, because this is sending a massive shockwave through global supply chains.
And the first industries on the front line are the big polluters. Steel, cement, aluminum, you name it. So if you're, say, a steel producer in India or a fertilizer company in Brazil, your life just got a whole lot more complicated. Selling to Europe, one of your biggest markets, now comes with a brand new, potentially huge price tag.
And this puts exporters in a really tough spot. They basically have three choices, and none of them are great. 1, just absorb the cost and watch your profit shrink. 2, invest a ton of money, we're talking billions, to decarbonize your whole operation. Or 3, just give up on the massive EU market and try to sell your stuff somewhere else. It's a classic rock and a hard place scenario.
What this is doing is accelerating what some people call a bifurcation, a splitting of global supply chains. You could end up with two worlds, a green bloc of countries trading with the EU and everyone else. That single global marketplace we've all gotten used to, it could be starting to crack apart.
And you know, this isn't just about dollars and cents or supply chains. This is creating a brand new fault line in global politics.
And yeah, as you can probably guess, not everyone is thrilled about this. Countries like India, China, Brazil, South Africa, the big emerging economies are pushing back, and they're pushing back hard. For them, this isn't about saving the planet. It's about Europe pulling up the ladder behind them. And this is where you really see the two stories clash. The EU's frame is all about global climate responsibility. But from the BRICS perspective, this looks a whole lot like neo-protectionism. Basically, they're saying the EU is using climate as a cover to unfairly protect its own industries. So when you boil it all down, this isn't really a fight about carbon.
it's a fight over who gets to write the rules for the 21st century economy. Who has the power to decide what's fair? So where do we go from here? Well, love it or hate it, CBAM is forcing a massive change in how we think about carbon.
See, carbon isn't just an environmental issue anymore. It's not something you just talk about at climate conferences. It is now a hard-nosed factor in business strategy, in logistics, and, well, in geopolitics.
Let that sink in. It is becoming a strategic asset. The ability to make something with a low carbon footprint, that's not just a nice little bullet point on a corporate responsibility report anymore. It's a source of real economic power. And that's really the bottom line here. Low carbon production is now a core competitive advantage. Being green has shifted from being about public relations to being about pure economic survival. If you don't decarbonize, you're going to find yourself locked out of some of the richest markets on the planet. Which brings us to the final huge question. In a global economy that is now starting to price things by carbon, who writes the rules next? The EU fired the starting gun, but now the race is on, and it's not clear at all who is going to shape this new world.